I'm Dr. Ryan DeBell from The Move It Fix. This is Move It Fix Monday. What I want to talk to you guys about in this week's video is the basic anatomy of stretching the hip flexors. So this will be a good little look at how do you differentiate stretching the quads from stretching the hip flexors and what are the implications there. So let's first talk about the hip flexors, and there's essentially four hip flexors. There's a muscle called your rectus femoris, which we talked about in the quad video, so refer to that. There's a muscle called your sartorius, which we're not really going to get into in this video. What we are going to look at in this video are two muscles. One's called your psoas and one is called your iliacus, and together those are often referred to as the Iliopsoas. So the first one we'll talk about is the psoas. So that is a muscle that attaches onto your lumbar spine and maybe even up onto the bottom of your thoracic spine like this. And it travels downwards, and this is behind your organs. This is behind your intestines. It's not like you can just poke into this muscle, which is like a common misconception that you could just, we see this illustrated in a book, so we think that we can just easily access it. And it's not necessarily like that because there's all this stuff going on. But the anatomy of the muscle is such as this. It is way back here, it attaches, and it goes down, and it would attach into your leg onto this little bony thing on your femur like that. So it goes like this. And it's a little bit more contoured than that. And then the second muscle is called your iliacus, and the iliacus muscle starts essentially on this area of your pelvis. So it lives here, and then what it does is it travels with the psoas. You can imagine the psoas going like this, and then they meet up right here to create the iliopsoas complex, as you could call it, and then they both attach onto this. There's a little ligament that runs right here that these muscles and the tendon travels beneath, which is obviously not seen on this skeletal model. So when these muscles contract together, you could imagine that when they contract, it pulls your hip up into flexion, hence why they are called hip flexors. So what are the implications? These muscles are stretched, especially the psoas. Remember, we've been talking about muscles that cross multiple joints and how we can affect them by setting things up. If you think about the iliacus, it really only goes, it's pretty short muscle. It's not like your lat, which goes all the way from your low back to your shoulder, so you can like predispose it. I suppose if you tilted your pelvis a certain way, maybe you could get a little bit of pretension on the iliacus, but for the psoas, you can really kind of bend your torso away and then extend your hip, which is going to give you the most stretching on it. Some people argue that if you round your back or extend your back, that's going to change a lot, and that's arguable. So here's the implication. We talked about the rectus femoris a couple weeks ago, how it crosses the knee and the hip. So that means if I was going to stretch my rectus femoris, I would go into a lunge position, I would crunch a little bit, and then I would also want to flex my knee. So if I do this, I'm going to hit rectus femoris. If I straighten my knee out or just don't have it maximally flexed like that, I'm going to take tension off the rectus femoris, and then if I go into pure hip extension, that could get me able to hit the iliac or the iliopsoas more so than the rectus femoris. But if you want to hit the psoas more, what you can then do is, let me get it so you can see the front here, is you can go into hip extension mildly, and then you can side bend away because of the attachment points of the psoas on the spine. You can try to predispose it here. Some people will go arm up overhead, and I think that's probably okay, but I think you're going to run into some lat tension as well. So if you wanted pure psoas, you could go hip extension, side bend, and that should make sense based on the anatomy. If you think about what's happening under the skin, you're taking your hip into extension, and then you're side bending away, and remember those attachment points are here. So that would be the implications for stretching the psoas and the iliacus, and some of the basic anatomy. Now it's important to note too that, as I said, there's a lot of organs and things, there's a lot of nerves and vascular structures around the psoas, so it's not something I think people should roll out aggressively, but that is the basic anatomy of how you can stretch it. So that's what I got for you guys this week on Move It Fix Monday. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, you can find me at The Move It Fix. Make sure to check out one of my live events, 8-hour workshop of stuff like this at themoveitfix.com/workshops. I'll see you guys next week.